Hello and welcome to Belen Cemetery Ghost Stories. Recently I created a video about Bachelor's Graveyard involving the various hauntings that are supposed to occur there. Not long after that, one of my viewers by the name of De Los Santos suggested that I look into Belen Cemetery. This cemetery has quite a unique set of hauntings that seem to cover just about every topic in the paranormal world. While a good number of the stories are seen as legends, many times there can be truth behind any tall tale. Belen Cemetery, also known as El Panteon de Belen and originally named Santa Paula Cemetery, is found in Guadalajara, Mexico. Construction for the site began in 1786 due to the need for burial plots outside of town after a recent outbreak of diseases such as cholera killed a good number of the population. The architect of the project was Manuel Gomez Ibarra, who was quite famous at the time for designing the Hospicio Cabanas and the Guadalajara Cathedral Towers. As per his request, he was buried at the site as well, but in an unmarked tomb that to this day has yet to be found. The cemetery was built right outside of the Civic Hospital of Belen. This is one of the reasons behind the name. Both the hospital and cemetery were built near an old orchard, known as San Miguel Belen, which is how both received their name. In the center of the graveyard, one will find a chapel dedicated to Santa Paula, which houses a mausoleum underneath that is the final resting place for many of the important figures from the area's history. The graveyard itself was split up into two separate sections, with one being for common folks while the other was set up for the burial of the wealthy. This cemetery is unique in that it is laid out in various orders, with burial sites facing all directions and with tombstones varying in size and grandeur. In 1896, the property was officially closed after only being open for an extremely short period of time. As stated previously, this location has many stories involving spirits rising from their graves, but before going into those entries, I would like to mention another not-so-spooky tale that I found quite interesting. Within the cemetery lies the graves of Joseph Johnston and his wife Jean, who were both native to Scotland. Joseph was a doctor who moved to Guadalajara with his wife, and treated many of the people there a lot of the times free of charge. Neither of them were wealthy, but were known to help out as much as they could with the locals. Frustrated with their finances, they prayed to become wealthy every night at exactly 12 o'clock for 12 straight days. Their luck changed and they won the lottery, which made them very rich. After their death, and to this day, many people visit their tombs in order to wish for something good to happen to them. It is said that one's wish would be granted only if the desire came directly from the heart. I know this story doesn't fit with the spooky topic, but I thought you might find it interesting as well. Now, on to the part that I'm sure you've been waiting patiently to hear about, and that is the short ghost stories. We will start with a story that is told involving a pirate. According to the legend, a man spent his youth sailing the Pacific Ocean, attacking ships and stealing their wealth. As time grew on, he amassed quite an amount of riches and decided to bury it all in one location in Guadalajara. As he aged, the now old pirate refused to disclose to anyone the location of the treasure, even to his own son. The reason for this wasn't due to mistrust, but rather for the fact that he kept his pirate past away from his heir. Not long after, he died and was buried in Belen Cemetery, taking along with him the location of the gold and jewels. According to the legend, if one of pure soul was to find and visit his grave at midnight, and pray for the pirate's soul, he would rise from his grave and tell that person where the treasure was buried. Many have tried this ritual, but none have succeeded in rousing the swashbuckler from his rest. So it is said he has yet to find that pure soul he is looking for. I feel odd adding my 2 cents here, but I can't help but feel that if this story is true, which I doubt, then maybe the one person that he would deem worthy would be his son. Now, we move on to an interesting one about ghost dogs. The man of the dogs has a tomb located in Belen Cemetery, and when he was alive, he received his name due to the fact he had quite a few dogs that he looked after. One night he was brutally murdered, but that didn't keep his spirit from stopping at his favorite bar for one last drink. During the night, people could hear his dogs howling for the loss of their friend. Once the man was buried in Belen Cemetery, it is said that if you scratch his tomb, it would cause the dogs to start howling again. What makes this story interesting is that there are quite a few ghost dog related stories that are involved that I feel may be linked. One such tale claims a widow jumped the graveyard fence to visit her deceased husband's grave, but while she was there, a pack of hellhounds attacked and killed her. According to that story, the ghosts belonged to the devil himself. Maybe all along the dogs weren't just friends of the man in the original story, but more so spies waiting for the right moment for his soul to be taken. Moving on to a fairly odd one. It is said that a boy named Santiago was staying at the Belen hospital that I previously mentioned, due to being diagnosed with cancer. Every day his mother would stay with him, but as expected, he showed no signs of improvement. One day while he was sleeping, his mother put a picture of her son's favorite saint in the boy's hand, hoping it would facilitate a divine cure. Santiago woke up, and the moment he saw the picture, he got angry and cursed it. His mother tried to calm him down, saying God would heal him, but that only incensed the boy more. At that point, he said he didn't believe her, didn't believe in God, and told her to leave. Later that night, sadly the boy snuck out of the hospital and hung himself in a tree nearby with a bedsheet. After the staff found him, they buried the boy and decided to cut the tree down. To this day, the only thing that remains of the tragic event is the small stump from where the tree once stood. That is, unless you were to visit at night. In a strange twist, it is said that around midnight, if you were to look in the location, you would see the ghostly silhouette of the tree with what looks like someone hanging from its limbs. I personally have heard of ghost animals, cars, houses, and even hairbrushes, but this is the first time I've ever heard about a ghost tree. With a lot of previous stories, they fall into the vague category of this man or this person, which always leads to scrutiny. But with our next story, it breaks all those problems and may be eerily true. A 10-year-old boy named Ignacio Torres Antaboreno, Nachito as his family called him, constantly had a problem of being extremely frightened of the dark and enclosed spaces, so much so that he had to always have a light on and the windows open. On May 24, 1882, a huge storm hit the area, which caused the lights that Nachito required to be blown out. The next day, his mother found her son dead of an apparent heart attack due to the fear of being in the dark alone. The boy was buried in Belen Cemetery, but things only got odder. The caretaker came around the grave only to find a coffin was resting atop the soil. The man reburied it, but again it found its way to the surface. It is said that this happened over and over again for 9 consecutive days, until the family figured that the boy was still terrified of being away from the light. Finally, they built 4 torches on pedestals around the gravesite, with Nachito's casket being placed in an above-ground stone vault. To this day, people who visit his grave leave toys for the boy as a sign of respect and love. However, this story goes farther, where multiple people have claimed to see a balloon floating around the cemetery 3 to 4 feet off the ground, being carried around by an invisible being. Not only this, but frequently people have heard the sounds of a bouncing ball near the tomb. As I said, this story has a lot of details, and it makes it even more creepy. Our last story is, dare I say, fantastic, and it is one of the most popular locations in the whole Belen Cemetery. In the mid-1800s, the nearby townsfolk came across the startling discovery of animals left laying in the street, totally devoid of blood. This occurrence happened for a time, but soon moved on to the infants being found the same way. Fed up with the activity, a mob of men rounded up a group of suspected vampires and finally decided on one person who was extremely pale and, as the story goes, had the most vampiric features. The mob struck the suspect down and put a stake through his heart. The body was then buried in Belen Cemetery, and a stone slab was placed on top of his grave in case the vampire was to try to rise again. After the execution, the activities of animals and infants being left without blood ceased, which led everyone to think they had killed the right person. As time went on, a strange tree began to grow around the vampire's grave, which many believe came from the wooden stake in the vampire's heart. Soon the tree's roots cracked the stone slab, and many tales began to circulate. It is believed that if you were to cut any of the branches on a tree, instead of sap, it would gush blood. Also, it is said at night, if you are lucky, or in some cases unlucky, you can see the faces of the vampire's victims in the wood of the tree. In a situation of damned if you do, damned if you don't, Some tales claim that if the tree were to die, the vampire would be released and free to roam the earth. On the other hand, others claim that the tree is slowly elevating the vampire's casket to the surface, and when it finally does, the vampire will be free. I'm not quite sure what you'd do in that situation. However, they did erect a fence around the tree in an attempt to keep curious onlookers from getting too close. Granted, we started off a bit slow, but I hope you did enjoy the tales from this cemetery. There are quite a few more, but as usual they don't have much detail, so I couldn't include them here. I do suggest you look the area up, and if you happen to ever be in Guadalajara, they do offer day and night tours of the grounds for $3, so it would be an interesting trip. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this, and also, if you would, could you give this video a thumbs up, as it helps me out greatly, as well as my channel. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later!